I brought you something. Do you see this picture that I brought? What can you see here? Do you see a young girl? Do you see this young girl who is in her mid-20s maybe, wearing this beautiful dress to go to a party maybe? A beautiful dress and a necklace, wearing this black color fur coat. So today we are going to talk about this young girl. Are you ready? Do you see how she has turned her face to the other side? So let's talk about her. But I can see that some of you don't agree with me. Do you see someone else? Are you sure? What do you see? Maybe an old woman in her 70s wearing white color scarf. She has this big nose and an elongated chin with some wrinkled skin. Do you see an old woman instead of young girl? That's something to think about. Am I right? Which one do you see? Tell me exactly what you see. Is it a young girl or an old woman? One person say it's an old woman, the other person say it's a young girl. Which one is it? I want to know what is exactly here. Tell me what is exactly here. Which one's right? Old woman or a young girl? That's a puzzle, isn't it? Some of you might say, well, I can only see the young girl. So I see a young girl. The other person might say, well, I can see the old woman, so this is a picture of an old woman. But can you let me know what is exactly in this picture? Can you? You can't. Why not? Because the question itself is wrong. My dear friends, I can't ask you what is exactly here. I can never ask you that question. Because that question is wrong. Because the lady is not here. The lady is there. Be it an old lady, be it a young lady. But the lady is not here. It's over there. Where? It's in your mind. Because the lady is what we call the perception. We call it a perception. For one person, the perception is the young lady. For the other person, the perception is the old lady. Today, let's talk about this. So when I was showing this picture to a few of my students in a different audience, and one of them argued with the other one. They said, well, how can you say that this is an old lady? See, can't you see this necklace? This is the necklace that the young lady is wearing, and she's looking outwards. And can't you see that she's in her 20s? So they argued. One of them told, no, you're wrong. You're obviously wrong. Can't you see that this is an old lady? How can you say that this is a young lady? They argued. Because when you're arguing, think about it, ladies and gentlemen, you are so sure about what you see. You are so sure that the old lady exists here, and that is your conclusion. And that is what we call a perception. The perception is what you truly believe in. It is what you see. And not for a moment that we think that it can be wrong. It can be something is deceiving me. Of course, your mind is deceiving you, but you don't know that. That is why we argue, don't we? Sometimes we argue about a lot of things. Think about it for a moment. You argue that there's an orange here, and someone might say, no, it's an apple. How can you say no? Can you say no? Take this example. The old lady exists in your mind, it is your own perception, and you can never say what is actually here. Asking it is actually wrong because it is your perception that tells you it's an old lady and you believe in it. And the other person might say it's an orange. One person might say it's an apple. Which one's right? Which one's wrong? You can never say. But we truly believe in what we see as the truth, as the reality, and we tend to argue. And we tend to prove ourselves that that is right, because that is the conclusion that comes to us naturally. So there are so many instances that we argue about. Maybe you have argued with your siblings about your favorite movie, your favorite book. You have read this beautiful book and you like it so much, and you want everyone to agree with you. You want everyone to acknowledge your opinion. And you say, well, I read this book, it's marvelous. But someone might say, what? No, that's the worst book that I have ever read. So you get hurt feelings, you hurt your feelings, and you might keep a grudge against that person just because that person disagreed with your favorite book. Because for you, that is the truth. Because for you, that perception is what you believe in, and you believe that is what the others also see. So you tend to believe, how can they say like that? How can they disagree? It's obvious that the book is beautiful. It's obvious that it's well written. But that person disagree. No, ladies and gentlemen, it's not that. That is what they see. That is what they perceive. Just like how you perceived an old lady and how they perceived a young lady, or the other way around. It is what they see and it is what they perceive. It is what's right for them, because that is the conclusion that they get. No matter how many times I tell you that please try to understand that this is an old lady, not a young one. You might argue with me. You might say things that no, that's not true. But I see what I see and you see what you see. That is why it's called a perception. And we can never say what's exactly right here. Always rely on our perception. So where does this perception occur? In your mind. Yes, you can't see your mind, but you can see your perception. You can see, you can perceive things. So how does this perception occur? Based on your views, based on the things that you already know, and your experiences. There's a lot of factors that contribute to your perception. Do you agree with me? A lot of things that contribute. So it depends on all those underlying factors. Those we call the causes. So many underlying causes contribute to your perception. So is it right or is it wrong? Wrong question. It is what is being perceived. The only problem is that, don't you think that it's very dangerous that we direct our words, actions, and thoughts based on something that we truly believe in, but we can never believe in it? But we sometimes tell lies, we sometimes steal from the others, we sometimes hit others, hurt others' feelings, argue with them. Sometimes we even break our marriage, break our bond with someone we care about. Why? Because of one single perception that we truly believe in. Don't you think that it is very dangerous? This mind is a very dangerous equipment, ladies and gentlemen, unless you have tamed it. Unless you have become a person who understands this mind, a mind doctor. Unless you have become a mind doctor, living with this mind is very dangerous because it can lead you anywhere. There's this beautiful stanza in a book called Dhammapada. Maybe you have heard about it. It says, Diso disa yantang kaira, verivapana verinang, micha panihitang chittang, papyonang tatogare. I'll tell you the meaning. It's in Pali. Do you have enemies? You might have, you might not. But who is the worst enemy that one person can have? That enemy that kills you, maybe torture you until you die? Maybe an enemy that kills your brother and sister, maybe your son, daughter, your loved one? Is that the real enemy? Or is it the enemy that take you throughout this sansara, that make you live with a lie, make you do stuff to the others, make you angry because of wrong perception, because it gives you a wrong conclusion? It can take you to anywhere that will make your life miserable, anywhere. Because it gives you a conclusion always. That enemy gives you a conclusion which might lead you to steal from others, kill others, torture others, and hit others, do bad stuff, do unwholesome deeds. Because this enemy gives you a conclusion, a perception. So what is the worst enemy that one person can have? Not once, not twice. An enemy can kill you once. An enemy can hurt you once, but this enemy can kill you million, trillion times, many times. And that enemy is called an untamed mind, ladies and gentlemen. Untamed perception. Untamed mind. A mind that is not tamed with this truth. A mind that you haven't understood right. That is the worst enemy that the one can have. That is the meaning of that stanza. So, what about these assumptions? We all make assumptions, right? As ladies, we always assume. I'll give you a good example. If you see this big hair inside your husband's purse, maybe in his wallet or in his bag, what do you assume? Or maybe he's in a long phone call with someone. Maybe he's talking and maybe he's laughing with a woman over there, a beautiful woman, a good-looking one. And he's always smiling and talking with this woman. All these incidents, separate incidents, what do you normally think of that as a woman? We tend to perceive each of these and we tend to come to a conclusion. What is the conclusion? Maybe he's cheating on me. Maybe he's in love with someone else. Maybe he loves her more than me. Isn't that an assumption? Assumptions are actually perceptions in your mind. And the perception is based on so many things, so many factors. And we tend to believe that the assumption is right. If only we understand it is an assumption, then we know that it is just an assumption. There's no validity to it. But most of the time, when we are unaware of this truth, we believe that it is not an assumption, it is the conclusion. Just like when you saw this, you came to the conclusion that this is this is a young woman, you come to the conclusion that he's cheating on me, he loves someone else. That is a perception. But you don't understand that. You believe that that is what is really happening. And based on that, you tend to use your words, harsh words. Sometimes you shout at him. Sometimes you become very angry. The next day when he has some work and doesn't want to eat the breakfast that you made, it blasts you up. You want to tear a new page for him. You want to shout at him words that hurt others. Some actions that sometimes you lose sleep. Sometimes you are so sad you cry. You cry. Why? Why all this hassle? Why all these sadnesses, frustrations? Because you don't understand that it is just a perception. Because you don't understand that everything's just an illusion in your mind. Think about your child. Your child is very late and you're waiting for him to come from school and he's so late, so you're waiting and your frustration is building up inside you. And one single moment and you get a phone call and without even knowing, you assume that it's from the school or maybe your husband saying that the child is safe without even looking at the phone. That is a perception, that is an assumption. Everything, every single moment you live with a perception. And we base our decisions, we base our most important decision, that is our life, on that perception. Because we don't know that it's a perception. We do things. We become angry. We sometimes break off our relationships because of assumptions. That person doesn't love me anymore. It's an assumption. It's a perception. So there are two words like perception and assumption. Assumption is when you know that it's not true. But if I ask you again, which one's true? Old lady or the young lady? Which one's true? The question is wrong. So perception is a perception. You can't say which one's the right perception, which one's the wrong one. You just have to understand that it is not actually there. It is in your mind. And knowing that will stop you from harming others, hurting others, putting yourself in agony and pain and misery. I invite you to find out what is really happening in this mind. I invite you to explore this mind and become a mind doctor and explore what is really there. Explore the science behind the mind. That is the biggest investment that you can ever make if you really want to be happy. That is the biggest investment, ladies and gentlemen. Take your time and invest in it. It's worth it. Because happiness lies just around the corner. You just have to understand the truth.